No, not for me.
Perfect. Quick order, just background, 2 advantages. POIs, I prefer verbal. If I'm going too fast, just say slow. If I'm being unclear, say clear. 7-minute speech. Is anybody not ready? My time begins in 3, 2, 1. Resolved, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences should establish an award for outstanding achievement in popular film. As side government, we have the burden of background, and I'll get into that right now. Definition, everything is pretty implied within the info slide, but established is going to be to create. Our plan is just simply going to be the topic, and our funding is not going to be necessary. Our method of implementation is just going to be normal ways and means. However, we suggest basically a poll from like average moviegoers who are then going to like send what they think to like a committee who's then going to decide the final. This is going to be as soon as possible, and it's going to be implemented along with like the new rules that the Oscars done. That being said, the weighing mechanism for this debate round is going to be what's best for the Oscars, as they are the one who is implementing this. They're looking at this from how is it going to help them. Therefore, we should be weighing this on under their perspective, what is going to be the best for them. Should they implement this? Should they not? That being said, let's get into the advantages. Advantage number 1 is that it allows movie makers to escape from the bias inherent in the Oscars. Our uniqueness for this is number 1, the best pictures in isolated space. Smaller budget movies got nominated and win much more. So from 1991 to 2008, when the field was narrowed and it was harder for blockbusters to get a nod, the best picture winners cost on average about $50 million to make. Then from 2009 to 2017, it was still high and it increased $19 million. This doesn't even account for inflation, which would raise the average budgets of older films even higher, right? At one point in its history, Oscar voters routinely named blockbusters such as Titanic or Gladiator as the year's best. That changed recently. Best Picture victors such as Moonlight, Spotlight, and the 2018 winner of The Shape of Water have been films ensconced by in the art house world, whereas well-reviewed hit films such as Guardians of the Galaxy or Star Wars: The Force Awakens have only been recognized for their technical achievements. The numbers don't lie. Lower budget films are winning more frequently than that since the nominee cap was raised, right? They also prefer very US-centric ideas. That's ridiculously narrow-minded at a time when artistry has expanded greatly. Let's be honest, though, like My Fair Lady was voted Best Picture in 1964, it would not even be nominated for Best Picture in today's climate. Dark Knight was famously not included in the Best Picture nomination, and large movies typically do not win the award in general. So from what do we see? We see a lack of diversity. In the past, the Best Picture Award has been criticized for its lack of diversity, both in terms of films that are nominated and films that have been nominated, and the winners that are selected. Some argue that certain genres or styles of filmmaking, such as independent or international films, may be underrepresented, while more mainstream or commercially successful films tend to dominate the category. This can result in a limited representation of the diverse stories, voices, and perspectives that exist in the film industry. There's also representation of underrepresented communities, right? The Best Picture has faced criticism for its lack of representation in underrepresented communities, including people of color, LGBTQ plus individuals, and other marginalized groups. We inherently solve for this because more people are going to be voting for films where they see representation, and therefore they're going to be more likely to like vote for movies that they think they see themselves more in. Additionally, we're going to be expanding accessibility, right? Why is this important? Well, the links are number 1, it allows small independent films to get more awards in, right? The new category resolves a more insidious happening that being members who nominate smaller independent films because they believe blockbusters were already compensated with cash, despite the artistry that many of these big films bring to the screen. Academy members have gamed the system for years, and this new award will limit the damage. Some industry people are also worried that honoring popular films will take credibility and attention away from the Best Picture category, yet this is simply not true, right? We believe that both awards offer well-deserved recognition for broader, fine works of art. It simply expands recognition and inclusiveness. You also have to look at inclusivity, right? Popular films, especially those in genres like comedy, action, fantasy, often have large fan bases and bring joy to millions of people around the world. Recognizing popular films with a dedicated award category could help bridge the gap between critical acclaim and audience enjoyment, and acknowledge the diverse tastes and preferences of moviegoers. It also has a boost to the industry and economy. Popular films are often big box office successes and contribute significantly to the financial success of the film industry. Recognizing their achievements with a dedicated award category could help incentivize the creation of more commercially successful films, which in turn can generate more revenue for the industry, create jobs, and stimulate economic growth, right? This also leads me to my second advantage, which is simply the idea that increasing excitement for the movies and Academy / accessibility. Accessibility is the big tagline for this. The uniqueness is number one, viewership for the Oscars has been decreasing year after year, and people are becoming more and more angry with the lack of big picture films in Best Picture. The award show rating has been in almost unbelievable decline in the past decade, falling by nearly half from $43 million or 43 million viewers, in 2014 to 23 million in 2020. Then the very next year, they dropped again by more than half to 10.4 million. The viewership drop among 18 to 49-year-olds, which also marks a 64% decline from last year, potentially diminishes what ABC can charge for ads in the future years. Meanwhile, the overall plunge in viewership could limit the number of people who will then go on to pay to watch a company's film because they saw it on a show and established trend. What are the links to this? Well, number one, more people watch, which increases the amount of people who are interested in smaller movies because they have more attention drawn to them. It also increases people's general interest in films if they feel there's more accessibility and recognition in larger movies, and they can actually have a say within the actual Academy. More people also watch big picture films, right? This turns into a full family event in some ways, and more people can feel that they have their voices heard. Three, it appeals to more people. The organization seems to have settled on a temporary middle ground in its quest to make the Oscars more appealing to casual moviegoers amid continuously dwindling rates of the broadcast in this year's crop of nominees, including more art house titles like The Power of the Dog and The Drive of My Car. Four here is audience engagement. Popular films are often discussed and debated by audiences, and they can generate significant buzz and excitement. Creating a separate award category for popular films could encourage increased engagement from audiences as they anticipate and participate in discussions around their favorite films. This could help generate more interest and enthusiasm for the film industry as a whole. This leads to the impacts, which are simple, right? The more you have a popular film award, that means that more people feel that they are represented within the space, and it means that more people are going to tune to the Oscars, which helps rebound its viewerships. This is inherently good because it can now stay relevant amidst a time of multiple other shows which are now taking over the spotlight. This means that when we're weighing under what's best for the Oscars, we should be looking at this and this accessibility argument as the bigger thing. Some other things are like subjectivity and biases, right? In any other words, the Best Picture award is subject to the subjective opinion and biases of the voting members of the awards organization. This can result in certain films being favored over others based on the factors such as personal preferences, industry politics, or popularity among voting body, which may not always align with an inclusive and diverse representation of the best films. Another reason why creating this new would be very good would because it really boosts representation diversity. Popular films can often represent different cultures, identities, perspectives, providing a platform for underrepresented voices and promoting diversity in film industry. An award category specifically recognizing outstanding achievements in popular film could highlight the contributions of diverse filmmakers and actors. For these reasons and the accessibility point, I urge a strong vote for side affirmation. Thank you.
All right, cool. Sorry, there was something up. Okay. I will start on framework and then op case and then gov case. Cool. We strongly negate the resolution that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences should establish an award for outstanding achievement in popular films. Starting on framework, just on the weighing mechanism, we believe this shouldn't only be weighed on benefit to the Oscars, but also to create a broader scope for the round and how they would actually make their policy-making decisions. They should also consider the impact to people who are involved in the making of movies, because this is the other group that the Oscars primarily affect, and so this should be taken under consideration. Moving over to the opposition's case, our first contention is that of the purpose of the Oscars. In the status quo, the purpose of the Oscars is to give awards for artistic and technical merit. It's meant to showcase the most inventive, creative, and touching movies, and celebrate their artistic abilities. The second thing we see in the status quo is that high-grossing movies and blockbuster films that are really popular are already completely known, right? They don't really need this spotlight shined on them because obviously they're already blockbusters. They're already really popular. So the links here is that this new version, this new award will take away from the focus of the Oscars and just make it into more of a popularity contest, right? This is going to decrease the artistic and creative merit of the Oscars within the artist community. And then also it'll just be boring for viewers because we already know who's going to win. It's already likely going to be the most highest grossing movies that are already really, really popular, because that's who like citizens are going to be nominating and sending their opinions to the committee about. So basically, overall here, you're going to see that the prestige of the Oscars is going to go down because it's just about popularity instead of about artistic merit and creativity. This means that there's going to be less prestige associated with the award, so that when people win awards, it's just going to not matter as much to movie makers. Right now, the Oscars, winning any Oscar is a really prestigious award, and this will decrease, which inherently hurts all movie makers, all people who are winning this award. My second contention is that it prevents popular movies from winning the Best Picture. So we see that the Best Picture is the most important nomination in the status quo. It's the most prestigious thing to win that really everyone wants to win. But right now, this award will actually put popular movies in a box. It gives them their own category, which actually gives the Oscars more of a reason to not consider popular movies ever for Best Picture, because instead they can just put them in this separate category. This means that even if a popular movie has really, really good is really imaginative and has good and interesting plots, it's going to be much less likely to be considered for Best Picture because it will instead just be given this much less prestigious award. So the impact is it makes the Oscars more imbalanced, right? It's inherently hurting all people who are involved in making really, really popular movies and blockbuster films, especially things such as Star Wars, such as Marvel's movies, or even things such as Black Panther, right? Black Panther is actually quite an influential movie that has a lot of commentary on race, but under Gov's world, it would much likely to be pushed to the side given this much less prestigious award. And therefore it won't have as much of an impact because people aren't seeing it win Best Picture. My third disadvantage is that it decreases the creativity of movies. Two things we see in the status quo. One, currently the categories for nomination are based off of two things. One, the type of movie, such as a documentary or an animated movie, and then there's the Best Picture nomination. So this means that at most, a movie can be nominated into two categories, which means for a filmmaker, you are incentivized to make your movie as high quality as possible, as imaginative, as thought-provoking and creative as possible, so you're most likely to win these awards. The second thing we see in the status quo is that people actually get a lot of information from movies, right? Movies are uniquely thought-provoking in a way that lots of other forms of media are, simply because you can see actors' actual emotions, and they can have much more of an emotional pull on people, which means that things such that a lot of movies, especially ones that are representing underrepresented voices, are extremely important for breaking down societal barriers and having thought and creating thought-provoking conversations after people watch these films. So moving down to the link level, we see that there's going to be a new motivation. Think about this. Right now, you're going to just try to make your movie the best, but under the Gov's world, maybe you think that your movie is probably a pretty long shot for Best Picture. You think it's pretty unlikely to win your Best Picture. So maybe you decide instead you should just dumb your movie down a little and aim for Best Popular Film. You should instead try to make it into a blockbuster film that's going to be popular and nominated in this way. So there will just be all new types of cinematic arithmetic in play. You'll be thinking about what's worth more. In trying to win an award, you're much more likely to try to create a movie that's simply popular instead of actually thought-provoking and that matters. So the impacts here is that, one, you're going to be hurting the film world simply because you'll not be creating as much interesting movies. And then second, you're going to see that people are less likely to going to end up being less likely to be exposed to movies that actually challenge narratives and create an interesting conversation from this thought-provoking movie, which long-term will lead to a less thoughtful society, simply because so many people get the majority of their media from TV nowadays. Moving over to the government's case, their first contention is about allowing movie makers to escape bias. So one, they tell you that lower budget films win more, but we don't think this is an issue. Turn it to Gov's side. It shines what? Or sorry, turn it to offside. It shines a light on these lower budget films, which are actually the films that need to have the most appreciation. Popular films already have recognition. They don't really need to win these awards. Do we tell you there's not going to be an increase in diversity because of my analysis, they're not going to be winning the prestigious award of Best Picture. They'll be instead pushed to the side with this much less prestigious award. 3, we tell you there is a contradiction within the Gov's case. On the one hand, they tell you that big pictures need more recognitions, and then they tell you that also smaller films should win more awards. These are mutually exclusive and a huge contradiction within the Gov's case. 4th, we tell you
POI.
No, thank you. I don't have time. Sorry. On the point about making people happier because they get to see their popular films win an award, we tell you to cross-apply the second contention. They won't be seeing their favorite films win big picture award. They'll instead be winning this much less prestigious award that they don't really care about. And they also concede that big movies won't win other categories. Okay, moving down on their second contention, we tell you that live TV events are slipping across the board, including Grammys and the Super Bowl. This is non-unique. And 2, as we saw the controversy that this happened, many critics actually hate this idea. So if we have this award, many people will actually decrease the Oscars. For all of these reasons, I urge a strong opposition vote. Thank you. Sorry, also, before the next speech, can I go close my fridge because it's beeping? I think someone left it open and it's really loud. All right, fridge issue resolved.
All right. Let me just turn this off. Sorry. Okay. Can everyone hear me all right? Great. I'll start on the government case and then I'll go to the opposition case. I'll start on framework first. All right. Time starts in 3, 2, 1. The biggest reason why you're going to be voting for side government in today's debate round is because in the SQO today, the Oscars are losing respect, they're losing recognition, they're losing accessibility, and they're losing viewership. The best way to gain that back is not only by increasing accessibility through blockbuster films, but also by making sure that these larger films are getting more recognition so that people feel more attached to the movies that they really enjoy and feel more attached to the award show in general. And I'm going to explain why that's kind of the most important issue that we should be thinking about in today's debate round. Let's start on the framework. We tell you that the weighing mechanism in this debate round should basically be, what's best for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts. And given that this seems like a very fair weighing mechanism, right? They're the actor. They're obviously going to want to do what's in their best interest. Now, they say we should also consider how it's going to be affecting movie makers. This doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? Because that's, again, the Oscars care about what affects the Oscars, right? They're not necessarily going to care about what is going to affect everyone else, only if what affects other people is going to end up being a backlash on them. So we would argue, just stick with the government framework. It's the best one in today's debate round. And we argue that that's also really important because it's the biggest impact that the Oscars care about, right? If the Oscars are losing money, if they're losing viewership, that's going to be the biggest thing on their mind. And the best way to actually get that back is not by sticking in the status quo, where we're seeing viewership go down, the Oscars being repeatedly accused of constant racism and ignoration of different people from different backgrounds, but rather it's through creating policy change that's going to end up leading to these larger movies that are more representative of the broader culture that people are more attracted to, that not only increases eyes on this show in general, but also means that we're able to get more of the benefits the government side talks about. On our first argument, we talk about how, the policy will help us to escape from basically helps us to escape from the issues within the nominating process. So the first thing here they say is turn to the they basically say that the best picture is going the best picture category is going to lead to a bunch of harm. The best picture category is good because it nominates small pictures, and you're not going to get big pictures nominated anymore. A few things on this. Firstly, we want to specify that the large picture, nomination, the popular film nomination, isn't trying to find what was the most popular film that year. That's not what it does. Rather, it says in the category of popular films, which one, was the most critical, was the most creative, which one created the best overall film. It's still increasing, and it's still prioritizing ingenuity, creativity, risk-taking in film. Rather, it's just applying that category to popular films, because popular films have been historically left out of the big picture category. Now, they're going to obviously, of the best picture category. Now, they're obviously going to come up here and they're going to say, well, Black Panther got nominated, Dark Knight got nominated. Firstly, none of these films actually won. And secondly, what we ended up seeing is that we would argue that they could still be nominated. Look to other, award shows like the Grammys, in which songs are oftentimes nominated for multiple categories that are still very similar. For example, on the best record category and the best song category, which are oftentimes very similar nominations, we oftentimes will see the same song get nominated for both of those awards. There's no reason that this would stop happening. Rather, it's just specifying one pool to another. So if a film is really massive, like a Black Panther that really is transcendent, we would argue it could still easily get nominated. They also point out this contradiction. We say that big pictures need more recognition, but small films also need more recognition. Again, this policy is the best path forward for that. Right now, big pictures around the board do not get critical recognition by the Oscars, and this leads to a bunch of harms through accessibility, through watching the show itself. We believe that this policy is the best way to not only make sure that small films are able to get the recognition that they deserve, but also allows big picture films to get the recognition they deserve on a critical level. Because it's not like these popular films aren't taking creative leaps, aren't trying new things, aren't increasing diversity. And what we end up seeing is that because the committee oftentimes ignores these bigger films, instead promoting independent films, what we end up seeing is that this means that, the bigger films, which oftentimes are very diverse, culturally representative, and things like that, are oftentimes left off of the mark, which means that filmmakers, if anything, are less likely to, promote those ideas within their films. Continuing on, they say that live TV events across the board are slipping, so this is not unique. A few things on this. Firstly, the Oscars are uniquely losing a lot more viewership than other awards. The second thing, the Oscars have unique criticisms to it, such as the fact that they typically ignore actors that are from different backgrounds, such as the fact that they typically ignore bigger picture films. The fact of the matter is that if we're able to address these, very unique criticisms of the Oscars, we can then actually hope to, change accessibility. And even if it is the case that, slipping is occurring across the board, that doesn't mean that we can't try and increase it through these policies, right? That's not a reason to not try and increase viewership for the Oscars. So this isn't even a valid counter. Now, moving on to our second argument, where we basically tell you this idea that, excitement is falling across the board. This is definitely the biggest argument within today's debate round, mainly because this is what the Oscar cares about most. They argue the Oscar cares most about increasing creativity and criticalness within film. No, the Academy first needs to make money and they need to create viewership. Then they can start caring about are we nominated? Are the correct films getting nominated, or are we creating the right amount of content, right? And the fact of the matter is that it's not these big picture films aren't, creative, advanced, promoting really interesting ideas, right? So once again, you're still able to get this. Now, going to the opposition case, their first argument, they say that the new award will take focus away from the Oscars. In fact, it's going to do the exact opposite. It increases accessibility. It increases the amount of people watching. Think about the outrage that was occurred because the Oscars, once Dark Knight, a massive picture film, was not nominated. It was ironically right along the lines of when the Oscar film was receiving less and less attention, right? The fact that the Oscars have been been nominating less big picture films is one of the parts of the reason that people just don't watch the Oscars anymore. They don't know the movies that are getting nominated, and they don't feel the need to actually watch it. They say that people will know who's going to win if there are these big picture awards, and there's and it won't matter with movie makers. But once again, the disrespect towards the Oscars is happening right now. There's less viewership for the Oscars right now. People are disrespecting and not caring about the Oscars right now. So instituting this policy is not only a try or die situation, but what it also means is that you're actually increasing the amount of viewership, the amount of buzz, and you're increasing, this is a massive argument and a massive turn, you're increasing the creative direction that big picture films take. My opponents on their second argument give this crazy link scenario where they essentially say that people that are making small budget movies will try and make big budget movies now. Firstly, that should already be happening right now, and it's not. Because if you think about it, if you're a small market movie that's not going to make a lot of money and you think that you can't win an Oscar, why would you not just already, in the world we live in today, turn around and start trying to make big picture movies in order to make as much money as possible? Right? It happens in either world. So they don't actually address. So our counter makes absolutely no sense. But what we do know will happen is that bigger picture films, in order to appeal to this category, which is, outstanding performance, outstanding movies in the big picture category, will try and take more creative leaps, will try and do more creative things within the movie making process, because they believe that will actually allow them to win this Oscar award, generate more buzz. They say, these big picture movies don't need more buzz. Well, not every big picture movie gets the same amount of buzz. And, The Dark Knight didn't win wasn't the highest grossing movie, but it was famously not nominated for an Oscar. So nomination for an Oscar not only increases recognition within the Academy itself, but it also means that these bigger picture films, are getting a little bit of recognition through its creativity. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Violet Philhauer. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the second speaker from Berkeley High School on side opposition. Okay. In my 8-minute speech, I'll just start on top of case with framework and then go into op case, gov case. All right, so let's first start with the weighing mechanism, where side government is proposing simply best for the Oscars and side opposition tells you no, best for, the cinematic world, movie makers, and Oscars included overall. So side government tells you go with best for the Oscars because the Oscars only care about their production of the Oscars. But we tell you that the Oscars is one of the big spearheads of the cinematic world, right? They represent the cinematic world. And so the Oscars and the people who run the Oscars care about what the quality of movies are at the time. We tell you that Oscars are going to be caring about what the cinematic world is looking like, because you can only have a good Oscars if you're having high quality movies, if you're having creative movies, if you're having a diverse, production of movies, right? We tell you that the Oscars are going to care about the cinematic world overall as well, because the cinematic world is directly correlated to the quality of the Oscars. So we should be considering the overall cinematic world, including, impacts to movie makers, because the Oscars are going to care about that as well. Okay, now going over to opposition case. So our first contention is about how, having this award of popular film is going to decrease and get rid of the purpose of the Oscars. So the first thing they say here is that it's not like these big picture films aren't creative, so it's not really getting rid of this part of the creativity focus of the Oscars. But we tell you that the truth is that the most popular films often have much more simplified plots, because more people are going to see it because it feels a bit more accessible if they have a simple plot. Look to how in many cinematic universes such as Star Wars or Marvel, at least I consider, and I'm sure many of you do, many of the plots are extremely similar. You kind of just see a general storyline repeated over and over again. This shows that in one moment, please, that many big, popular movies are often just a lot more dumbed down and often fail to hit at the more deep stuff because they're instead just trying to tailor to having a very large audience come and see them. So we tell you that in creating a category for big picture, we are just going to be creating a general move towards more simplified plots that don't hit at the deeper issues of movies. Sure, I'll take your POI.
Even if, a Marvel movie is potentially dumbed down, isn't it also true that Marvel movies typically have lots of representation and oftentimes tie into, broader social themes as a whole?
Not as much as smaller movies that can have more focus on hitting deep issues without, because you're often more able to hit deep issues when you're not focusing on like having giant battle scenes and stuff. I would say a giant battle scene won't be able to hit at deep scenes as much as a, quiet scene that are more common in like lower money movies have. Okay. Next thing they say here is that like, we're decreasing in viewership right now and we need to like fix that issue first. Again, look to what we say in response to their like second contention, in that there was a ginormous controversy in response to the first time that this award was proposed. We tell you that the reason we don't have this award is because many movie critics said, no, thanks, we don't want that. And so we tell you that if we put this award in place, that controversy will repeat itself again. Once again, movie critics will say, no, thanks, and they will abandon the Oscars because there was a controversy around this for the first time for a reason. And we tell you that viewership is going to decrease if we have this award because many critics don't like it, and they don't like it for a reason, and that's just going to decrease viewership of the Oscar more than the increase that might come from having this award. And so again, we tell you that just also overall, the Oscars are going to become more boring. This is a point that goes unresponded to, so let's just go over it once again. The Oscars are going to become more boring because people already know what the most popular movies are. I mean, like in the year when Avatar came out, everybody knew that it was like the highest grossing movie ever. So everybody knows that it's already probably going to be considered and winning this popular film contest. This is going to make the Oscars more boring, is going to lead to less people watching the Oscars because they already know who's going to win this category, right? So we're just not going to actually see an increase in viewership because you're making the Oscars more boring and making movie critics very, very mad. And overall, you're just decreasing the creativity of the Oscars, decreasing the prioritization of creating highly creative films, because instead you're making it a popularity contest where people are trying to have the most popular movies to win this like competition, because this new category is a popularity contest. You have to be popular to be able to get into this category. So this award will just create a popularity contest, which takes away from the focus of the Oscars. That is a net bad thing because a lot of people won't want that focus to be taken away. On our second contention about how it's preventing popular pictures from winning the best like picture. So basically, I believe their main response here is that like, popular pictures can still be winning other categories. We tell you, even in their own case, they kind of show that like popular movies often just aren't winning Best Picture overall. And we tell you that this is going to become even more of an issue if you give them a separate category, because it gives like Oscar judges just a place to point to for, we are representing big pictures. So we are representing like, big films and like popular films because they have their own category now. And it just gives the Oscars one more reason to not even consider big pictures in the first place, because again, they can just say, we don't need to consider you for Best Picture because you have your own category. Go have fun over there. And we won't even... No, thank you. And so we just see that, again, this isn't really interacted with. And we're saying that like, it's just very unlikely for big pictures to win multiple categories now that they're going to have their own category, because Oscar judges have something to point to that for a reason that they don't need to consider these pictures for Best Picture overall. And again, we tell you that like winning this tiny like popularity award is that the like success you get from that is dwarfed in comparison to what it's like to win Best Picture. We tell you Best Picture has no prominence. Everybody pretty much knows what Best Picture is. Nobody's going to really look at you winning popular award and being like, that's so cool, when you could have won Best Picture. So winning this popular award isn't that impressive because it's not really well known and isn't as prominent as winning Best Picture. Our third disadvantage is that it decreases the quality of movies. They tell you that these big production movies are going to make their movies more creative so that they can win within this like popular contest. We tell you that like, even if that is true, the amount of movies that turn to just making like big movies instead of creative movies is going to be a greater increase. Because again, to get nominated to this category, you have to be a popular movie. So many movies that would have instead put their prioritization on being creative will turn to making their movies extremely, extremely popular. And once again, per my earlier warning, popular movies often hit at less deep themes. So we're going to see a greater increase in the amount of movies that are getting dumbed down to more popular than a marginal increase in, big movies trying to be more creative. Because again, you can't make a battle scene hit at like extremely deep themes most of the time. So we are going to see a decrease in creativity in the cinematic world, which is bad for the Oscars, because then the Oscars, are less interesting and aren't really fulfilling their purpose in the first place. Going over to side government. So their first contention is about how it'll like help balance out the Oscars. So they tell you again here that like big pictures can like that like in this big picture category, you're competing to be the most creative. But again, to even be in the popular film category, you have to be popular. So because people are going to try to be popular to be in this category, it does create a popularity contest where there's a less incentive to be creative and a bigger incentive to just create a dumbed down movie that more people watch in the film like theater. The title of the award is literally most popular film. We tell you that it will make the Oscars just a popularity contest. And then they tell you that like, oh, big pictures around the world don't get any recognition. And we tell you the likelihood that big pictures get recognition decreases more in their world because, again, they're giving Oscar judges a place to point to not nominate like, big popular pictures for best film, cross by my earlier warranting. On their second contention, they tell you that like, Oscars are uniquely losing viewership like right now. Again, cross apply everything I've said. People, film critics aren't going to like the Oscars. The Oscars are going to become more boring and viewership is going to go down if you have this award. So clearly it's best for the Oscars and best for the cinematic world to not have this award for outstanding achievement in popular film. So we are just strong vote for the opposition. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Judge, this round really comes down to 3 voting issues. The first is that of the creativity of movies and how it impacts society. The second is the popularity of the Oscars. And the third is the impact on creators of movies. And this plan is going to hurt movie makers. So on the first voting issue of creativity of movies, we tell you that there is going to be a decrease in the creativity of movies because this award for the Oscar is going to become a popularity contest. So if any movie maker who believes that they are going to want to make that they believe it is very unlikely they are going to get Best Picture, they are instead going to be incentivized to essentially dumb down their movie to make it a blockbuster film instead of something that is truly thought-provoking but probably won't make as much money. The opposition only says that this is non-unique because like people already want to make their movies super popular just so that they can make money. But this doesn't really engage with our analysis ever, that it is going to become even more of an issue, right? Because now not only will they be making less money, but they will also be they believe they will be more likely to win an Oscar if they make this decision to essentially dumb down the movie, not make it as thought-provoking. So here you can see that all of our analysis on how there will be less thought-provoking movies overall in society, and how this is actually going to have a pretty large impact on society because of the number of people who get a ton of their media and a ton of their information from movies and from films, is actually going to create overall decreased number of interesting movies, and also just there will be a less of an exposure to movies that challenge narratives, and so all of our impacts about an overall less thoughtful society flow through here. Okay, our second voting issue is that about the popularity of the Oscars. So here the government tells you that basically this is going to become more popular because people are going to feel more connected to the Oscars. However, I tell you in my first speech, and they never respond to, so they cannot in their last speech, that as we saw the controversy when this bill was first proposed, like 6 years ago or so, a lot of critics and fans actually hate this idea, and that's why it wasn't implemented. So we tell you that if there is going to be this award, many people will like the Oscars less because they feel there will be less prestige. What does this mean? Either this voting issue just entirely becomes a wash because some people are going to stop watching, or some people might start watching, but alternatively, it's going to become a vote for the opposition because they never respond to this analysis. And so we can assume that everyone that's watching the Oscars currently, that feels connected to the Oscars currently, and that made sure that this law didn't pass, or this new nomination didn't get passed when it was originally proposed in 2016, would stop watching the Oscars. And so the overall viewership of the Oscars will go down, and this will hurt the Oscars. And then the third voting issue is that of how it'll hurt movie makers. So here, government tells you that it's going to help movie makers basically because a lot of people who make blockbuster films are going to be nominated more and they're more likely to get Oscars. But we tell you that one, it's going to decrease the prestige of the Oscars as a whole, and two, it won't actually end up helping these movie makers of really popular films at all, because this award will just be a popularity contest. It won't have any prestige associated with it, and it will be less likely to end up winning Big Picture, which is the award that actually matters. For all of these reasons, I urge a strong opt-out. Thank you.
Okay, so 5-minute speech, quick order. I'm going to be just going down some general ideas and pass to victory for side government as to why this is a clear government ballot. Is anybody not ready? Okay, my time starts in 3, 2, 1. Judge, first up, what I want to make essentially clear to you is this win mechanism debate where you see the government winning on either side. Essentially, the topic here is that the Oscars care about the Oscars themselves, and the Oscars is decreasing in viewership, and they want to increase it. The only thing that matters in this debate round is gluing more eyeballs to the Oscars each year, as they're the one passing the policy. Our opponents try to argue that the only way to do this is by making sure that the quality of films stay high, yet understand that nobody is boycotting the Oscars because we're passing an outstanding film. Therefore, their impact here is extremely minimal. Warrant this out, and either way, it doesn't really matter. We win, as I showed you today. What you have to understand is that right now the problem is viewership is going down. And as long as you buy that in the status quo viewership is going down, by the fact that side opposition is voting for and advocating for the viewership to continue going down. Why is this bad? The Oscars can't monetize their ads, and it means that they're not going to be, and it's not going to be they're going to be doing anything. Additionally, by the fact that people aren't simply making films for the fact that winning Best Pictures. Jackson told you within his Grammys analysis, people can win both, and it doesn't deter people simply because of the fact that it's winning Best Picture. By the fact that if the Oscars are trying to do what's best for them, then what this means is that these big pictures are going to try and become more accessible to viewers, as now they're trying to appeal more to the people. More people are going to tune into the Oscars because they see movies that they voted for within this film. By the fact that the only way that the Oscars can get their prestige back is through people feeling connected to the movies in the Oscars, and that means attracting to the people. By creating this new award, as now films which get mass public appeal will be more accessible. On the small movies argument, by the fact that they're winning in SQO and they're going to still be winning in our world, we're simply providing a place where blockbusters such as Black Panther, which they use themselves, are actually going to win awards. By the fact that people don't view winning a not Best Picture as a loss and a failure, movies people still care about the Oscars. Therefore, this is still going to mean something. We simply bring prestige back to the Oscars. Judge, they try and tell you that winning Best Picture is the sole thing which matters. Yet understand that people watch the Oscars not solely for Best Picture, but for more than that. So if one more person watches this outstanding movie in popular field, then that is a win for side government, because we are making it so that more people are getting something out of the Oscars, which means that there are going to be more viewers in the future. Do not vote off, which is a sinking ship, which is currently the Oscars. Vote for something which is going to actually create a difference and make it change at all, right? Look at the SQO right now. Big Pictures are nominated, and they are being nominated even less. Look at the evidence we give you before. The Oscars viewership is decreasing. There is more controversy, etc. The best thing we can do is help the Oscars, is promote viewership by allowing films that a lot of people watch to get nominated. The Oscars won't be less boring. The award is essentially a Best Picture for bigger movies, so the most popular movie doesn't necessarily win the award. Smaller pictures are still going to be recognized because now they're going to be winning the Best Picture, while now bigger blockbusters are going to get the representation throughout this film, right? For the more creative / outstanding popular movie, they're going to win now. The outstanding popular movie category also promotes big movies to be more creative and to be more accessible to people. If you are a big blockbuster, you are going to want to be more accessible by representing the people who are watching more, as you understand that if I represent people and promote diversity within my movie, then I'm going to be able to get recognized for award more, which is just better for the film community. People aren't going to switch to trying to create popular movies if they don't think they can win an award, because then that would be happening right now. Judge, let's look at the impact level. The biggest impact and most solid impact in this debate round is accessibility. And the one way that you're voting for government here is on this accessibility point, because big blockbusters are making their movies far more accessible to the everyday watcher, not the critic. This means that now the Oscars is going to be more personified to each person, and people are going to be more wanting to watch the Oscars as they know the movies within it are things that they actually care about. That is the sole reason why you're voting government. Opposition is trying to play to the critics who are not the actual movie watchers. They promote this sinking ship, which is currently the Oscars, while we're trying to do something to change it so that more people are going to watch the Oscars and they're going to care more. Even if you don't buy side government on the fact that it's what's best for the Oscars, buy that viewers are going to be better if we implement Gov's plan, because now they're going to watch the movies on the Oscars and they're going to actually enjoy them since they represent them. Small pictures still get the representation in either world, so that should just be a wash. And even so, by the fact that the impacts on that are much more minimal because there are already these other award shows. By the fact that at the end of the day, you're voting solely on accessibility, because right now what you're going to see is that to be a movie person, you're going to be more accessible if you can appeal to people, not to the critics and the higher bureaucracies of the Oscars. For these reasons, it's a clear vote for side government. Thank you. Thank you.
Go around. That was fun.
Good
Great
job,
round.
everybody.
Thank you so much,
Good job.
judges.
Hang in there. We'll get back with you.